The world sees the crown, but not the weight it carries. Beneath this polished exterior, behind the palace walls where gold glitters and silence sings, lies a story few dare to speak. A tale not of rebellion, but of love. Not of betrayal, but of truth. They say I am the chosen one, the falcon of Dubai, but even falcons get wounded by the arrows of their own kin. This is the story of the day my father looked into my eyes, and no longer saw his son, but a stranger with a voice too loud for a kingdom built on silence. It started the day I confessed I loved not what tradition chose for me, but the woman who lit fire in my soul. She was not born of royalty, but her heart held more grace than any jewel. She didn't walk into the palace, she stumbled into my poetry, and from there, into my destiny. My father, a ruler with a gaze sharper than steel, warned me. He said love must bow to duty, and dreams must bend before the throne. But how could I explain to him that she was my duty now, my only crown? The moment I stood tall and said I wouldn't let her go, the air shifted. The room felt like a battlefield. My words were arrows, and they pierced the empire he built for me. He believed I had chosen rebellion, but I had merely chosen love. He told me I was blind, led by illusion. I said, "Father, I am finally seeing clearly." That clarity cost me everything. In that silence between us, centuries of tradition stood still. I remember the day he called the elders. His voice, once proud when it called me his son, now dripped with disappointment. They read out decrees. They murmured of exile. My name, once sung with pride, now echoed with shame in the halls of power. But I didn't bow my head. Not even when the world watched. Because if standing for love meant falling from grace, then let me fall with open arms. It hurt. More than any wound I'd ever known. Not the loss of title, nor the whispers in corridors. It was the look in his eyes, the father who once carried me on his shoulders, now carrying only coldness in his heart. That moment was the funeral of a bond I once thought unbreakable. Yet, even in that grief, I held her hand tighter. For if I lost a kingdom but gained her heart, I had still won. Nights grew longer. My poetry changed. No longer only about horses, falcons, and sands, but of ache, rebellion, and quiet wars fought behind closed doors. I wrote to survive. I wrote so history wouldn't be twisted. So one day, my children would know, their father didn't walk away from power, he walked toward truth. Even if it meant walking alone. She wept when she saw what I had given up. She offered to leave, begged me to return to the palace, to make peace. But how could I abandon the only one who stood by me when even blood turned its back? I kissed her forehead and told her, "You are my peace now. I don't need a throne when I have a heart that beats only for you." And so, we started again, not as royals, but as humans, broken, but together. Years passed. The world kept asking, "Why did your father disown you?" Was it power? Was it pride? Was it scandal? But the answer is simpler than all of that. It was love. A love that didn't come with royal approval. A love that didn't need permission. And though it cost me my place in the family I was born into, it gave me the family I was destined to create. My poems are now inked with both pain and peace. I no longer write to please an empire, I write to free my soul. And every verse carries a whisper of her laughter, every rhyme holds the memory of the battles we won with love as our only sword. I still walk with my head held high, not as a prince, but as a man who dared to choose his heart. Maybe one day, my father will read these words. Maybe one day, he'll see not defiance, but devotion. Not betrayal, but bravery. I do not wish him pain. I wish him understanding. I pray the winds of time will soften his heart and help him see the son he lost wasn't lost at all, he simply found himself. Until then, I will continue to write. I will continue to love. Because the truth doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes, it wears the scars of those who dared to speak it. And if this is the price of loving her, then I pay it willingly, without regret. So when the question echoes again, "Why did your father disown you?" I will answer with pride, because I refused to disown my heart. Let history judge me as it will. Let the winds of the desert carry my truth to every corner. I was not disowned for weakness, I was disowned for strength. And that strength began the day I chose her. The echoes of the past still linger in my footsteps. Every time I pass a familiar room in the palace I no longer call home, I remember the sound of his voice, calm, yet stern, like a man forced to choose between his legacy and his blood. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't trying to break the family, I was trying to rebuild it on truth. His silence may have pushed me away, but it taught me how to speak. Not with swords, not with authority, but with the delicate fire of words that never lie. I remember the day I left. The guards didn't meet my eyes. The gate that once opened for me with pride now creaked slowly like a warning. She was waiting at the edge of the courtyard, her eyes swollen with the weight of what I had lost, but she never asked me to stay. Her strength became my compass. With her by my side, I learned that exile is not always punishment. Sometimes, it's the beginning of a freer chapter written not by bloodlines, but by hearts unchained. They thought I would crumble outside the shadow of my father. But I bloomed in the sunlight of authenticity. I wasn't stripped of my name, I was unburdened of expectation. I could finally breathe, finally be. I was no longer a prince dancing to tradition's tune. I became a poet singing the truth of my soul. I traveled not to rule, but to reconnect. I met people who knew me not by title, but by tenderness. That was my true kingdom. Still, there are nights when the ache returns. Not because I miss the throne, but because I miss the man who once lifted me high above the world and called me his pride. My father was my first hero, and to lose that bond was like losing a part of my foundation. But a man is not measured by what he loses. He is measured by what he holds onto in the face of loss. And I held onto her, my truth, my muse, she became the ink in my veins. Every poem I penned after that day carried her heartbeat. She never asked for my sacrifices, but she cherished them. She never wore a crown, but she carried herself like a queen, my queen. And when I'd lie awake haunted by memories of my father's rejection, she would whisper softly, "You were not disowned, my love. You were released, so you could become who you truly are." The world watched, some with pity, others with scorn. They expected me to crawl back, to beg forgiveness, to renounce her. But they didn't understand that my heart had already made peace. I bore no bitterness toward my father. Only sorrow. Because the same walls that protected our dynasty had also imprisoned it. I had simply chosen to break free, to live in love rather than die in legacy. My siblings watched in silence, torn between loyalty and understanding. Some visited me in secret, their eyes filled with questions they couldn't ask aloud. I saw in them the same chains I once wore, the pressure to please, the fear of falling out of favor. I told them, freedom is not disobedience, it's the purest form of devotion, when you follow what's right, even if the world calls it wrong. In every village I walked, I found stories like mine. Lovers separated by class, fathers estranged from sons, daughters silenced for dreaming too loud. And I would share my story, not as a prince, but as a man. I saw how my truth helped others heal, how my poetry became a mirror for their pain. That's when I realized, this was my greater purpose. Not to rule a land, but to mend broken hearts through honesty. Time passed, and the kingdom carried on without me. New airs rose, new celebrations echoed through the palace halls. But even now, I wonder if my father ever sits by the window at sunset, watching the sky blush gold and crimson, and thinks of me. Does he wonder if I'm well? Does he read the poems that carry his name in hidden metaphors? Does he miss the son who used to write him letters every birthday? I have forgiven him, though the world may never understand why. Because forgiveness is not for the other, it is for the soul. To carry bitterness would only wound me further. I needed peace more than pride. And I found it. Not in the pages of a royal decree, but in the smile of a woman who never gave up on me, even when the world turned its back. My life is different now. Quiet, but full. No longer wrapped in protocol, but in presence. I plant gardens instead of policies. I sing lullabies to my daughter instead of attending court meetings. And in those little moments, when her tiny fingers wrap around mine, I know I made the right choice. My daughter will grow up knowing that her father gave up a kingdom so she could be raised in truth. So if they ask again, "Why did your father disown you?" I will smile and say, because I chose to be loyal to the love that gave me life, not the laws that tried to tame it. And in that choice, I found my real legacy, one that no crown can match, and no exile can erase. And now, as the world shifts and new histories are written, I no longer run from my past, I embrace it. Every scar, every heartbreak, every tear shed under the moonlit silence of the desert became part of the man I am today. I do not hide from the memory of that day when I stood before my father and chose my truth. I honor it. For in that moment, I was not merely defying expectations, I was giving birth to a legacy built not on obedience, but on courage. And no matter how far I've wandered from the palace gates, I carry the essence of my lineage within me, transformed by love. She has taught me that home is not a palace lined with marble, but the place where your soul is understood without explanation. Her touch grounded me, her faith rebuilt me, and her love became the map back to myself. Through her, I found a version of myself that no title could offer, a man who is whole, even when the world calls him broken. Her love is not loud, yet it silences every storm that once raged within me. In her eyes, I am not the prince who fell. I am the man who rose, stronger in truth than he ever was in tradition. Sometimes I dream of reconciliation, of a day when my father and I will meet not as ruler and subject, but as father and son. Where no royal guards stand between us. Where no crown weighs down our words. Just heart to heart, man to man. I would tell him I understand now how hard it must have been for him to see me walk a path he couldn't recognize. I would tell him that I never stopped loving him, even when I walked away. And perhaps, in the stillness of that moment, he would see not the son who disappointed him, but the son who had the strength to become something more. Until that day comes, I will continue to write. I will continue to build a new kingdom with every word, every whisper, every act of love. My poems are no longer just expressions of grief, they are bridges. Between past and present. Between father and son. Between silence and voice. And though I was once disowned by the man who gave me life, I have been reborn through the love that gave me purpose. In the end, I lost a crown, but I found a kingdom in her heart, and it is there, and only there, where I